Are Walter and Swade actually jocks? A bit of an education on foreskin. Maybe someone finds it hot? And the difference between individualism and collectivism in Western and Asian horror.
Hi everybody, welcome to Fake Film Fans. I'm Swade Best, your tiny, scared Filipino girl.
Whoa, I might get a little too horny for this episode.
No, we can't put that in the podcast!
And I, Walter, you know when your sweat evaporates and there's a little bit of salt on your fingers? Who knows, you might use that salt to rub it on your nipples or something. And I'm that piece of salt.
I'm horny. And it has nothing to do with Filipino girls, because I'm not a monster. Catherine is not going to be here today. She ate 2 pounds of bubblegum. She swallowed it all, and her intestines are just completely filled with bubblegum, and so she had to go to the hospital. She'll be fine. They just have to get all the bubblegum out of her insides.
Yeah, honestly, that adds to the horniness of already our very horny start.
Okay, there has to be rules to this. You can't be horny about the other hosts. There's a no horniness rule about the other hosts.
That's a good rule. No looting.
No looting.
Too far.
So
why aren't you attracted to Filipinos?
Okay. I'm not I don't have a problem with. See, now you're making me look like a bigot who hates Filipino people. I am attracted to a wide variety of human beings. What I said earlier was that I am not attracted to girls, like young Filipino girls.
Oh, that's what your intro was about. Oh, you wanted to be a little girl in the intro.
Yeah, because my movie is about little girls.
Okay. Now my shit has been taken out of super huge context about.
Yeah. You're the pedophile. I don't have a problem with Filipino women. I'm just not a pedophile.
That's pretty bad of me.
Podcast is canceled.
So, before we start, I actually wanted to bring up something. I recently was watching the Fear Street trilogy on Netflix, and you know the first Fear Street film starts out with a girl selling stuff at a bookstore, and she's like selling horror novels. There's a mom that tries to buy something, and she goes, right. Damn, that's a good book. And the mom is like, I don't give a flying fuck about this book. I'm just buying it for my daughter. And she was like, what an annoying customer in her facial expressions. And I was just like, dude, this is Swade.
Yeah, pretty
Except
much.
the bookstore's in a shopping mall.
I mean, honestly, so my dear sweet boss who I love her as a human, but as a boss, sometimes she can be annoying, but that's all bosses. Anyhow, she got hip surgery, and she's fine. Also, she's fine. But so she can't, like, come into the store because she can't walk up and down stairs and she can't drive. So it's literally just me there every day, and I am trying my best, but I don't think I'm doing as good a job as my boss would like, and I'm like just constantly freaking out. I'm just constantly in a low level of panic attack because I'm like trying to do everything for.
Oh, I almost feel like your boss is like making you do all this stuff because she's like, see, Swade, this is why you can't buy my store.
I mean, she's trying. I'll tell you, I think the main issue we have, there are things that she thinks are really important to the everyday stuff that I think are less important. And so we have a difference in priorities. Maybe that's actually because she knows more about how to run a business than I do.
You think customers should just be able to like take the book, read it, and be happy, and then leave the store without paying?
No, they don't have to pay me in money. They have to give me some sort of favor, usually of a sexual variety. Usually, I get a kiss. Each dollar that the book costs is a kiss.
Yeah, but that's not looting.
No, it's not loot.
If you held hands, though.
Dude, I would never hold hands with any of my customers. They're all terrible. No. So there's this lady who comes in who, she's like super chill, and she's actually really great. She's one of the people I can like say, I'm glad come into the store. She like started showing up while she was homeless, and now she has a place for her and her kid to stay, and she's had a stable job for a really long time, and so it was like nice being able to like help her out and, you know, like talk with her and like see that like my city's not just, like every once in a while someone escapes the brutal jaws that is homelessness in downtown Roanoke. But she has this kid, and she's like not very good at controlling him because he's like a fucking tornado. So because she wants to shop, literally my job when she's there is just to keep her kid entertained. And I know if my boss was there, she would be like, Swade, why are you not taking care of all the other store stuff. And it's because if I keep this kid entertained, this lady will spend like $30-$40 on books. You know, like if this little kid like keeps trying to jump off of shit. He was like jumping off the stairs, and I kept having to be like, no, come here, come on, let's talk about chicken nuggets. He's like touching everything. And he's super loud. He started like sticking his head out of the door of the bookstore and being like, hey, who wants to buy some books? Just all this shit. And it takes years off my life, this child. He's like 6. But no, I do get mad at customers sometimes when they're just like, I'm just here for my girlfriend. I got this sweet copy of whatever. And I'm just like, fucking.
Yeah, because men don't read, dude. That's some toxic masculinity if you read right there.
Dude, only nerds read. Cool muscle guys don't read. So
speaking of cool muscle guys, yeah, you like that transition? This probably doesn't sound that unique to if you don't really know me, but for someone like Swade who's known me for so long, this is like super surprising. But I'm going hiking later today, and the reason why it's surprising is because Swade knows me as someone who hates nature, who hates walking, who hates picking up my body. But ever since I moved back to Hong Kong, I have been moving more. I've reconnected with one of my jock cousins. And my jock cousin is like a super sporty person, always in the fucking gym, always boxing. He also loves to do like extreme sports. So in Hong Kong, there's not that much opportunity, but he's brought me to like wake surfing a few times.
Do you guys do that like in a place, like in a like poolish area, or do you go to the beach?
We go to the ocean technically. Wake surfing in Hong Kong is pretty like a unique thing where you basically go to where people used to be like fishermen, and then the fishermen boats like take you out to go wake surfing. Okay. So because the fishing business in Hong Kong is not as bright and nice, instead a lot of some of these fishing boats have transformed their activities to become different things. But yeah, so the thing about the hiking stuff is, to him, hiking means climbing.
Oh shit, really?
Yeah, so the funny thing is, it always throws us off the first few times, because he's always like, dude, this is an easy mountain, let's hike it. We can do it. And then we get there, and then we all have to use our hands. I don't know, it's not that intense, so maybe it's like 5 minutes of just climbing.
Yeah, you're acting like you're some fucking like a mountain climbing goat man, Walter. Like, I'm envisioning you right now, just like climbing, and you're a little drunk, and you're just like, oh, 1 second, and you like take a break to like take a drink of Kentucky Gentleman, and then just like fall off the cliff. What are you talking about? Climb up a mountain.
Speaking of drinking, though, like...
No, we're not done with this climbing thing. You gotta tell me more about this. This sounds insane to me. You were like, I'm gonna go on a hike today. It's like no big deal. And I was like, yeah, that is no big deal. I like smoke, and I smoke cigarettes, and I have like bad lungs, and I'm fat, and I still go hike. And then you drop this bomb on me that's like, yeah, I'm gonna go scale a mountain with my fingers. Like I'm training.
But let me quickly go, it's completely related. I honestly, if I never drank at an extreme sport before, I might drink while I climbed and then I've died. But because I drank at an extreme sport before, I decided never to drink again.
What sport was that?
One time I was skiing with my brother and my sister.
Oh god, not skiing.
I just wanted to go drunk skiing. That was it. I wanted to go drunk skiing, so I got pretty drunk.
Which is so
because
dangerous.
I was drunk, I was like, yo, you guys want to do some tricks? And my brother and sister were like, sure, why the fuck not?
How old were you? When was this?
Dude, this was like right before COVID started.
Okay, so this was recently.
Also, I'm not a good skier.
Yeah,
and that was the first time I skied for like 7 years.
Well, you're not really good at sports. I mean, you're not very good at basketball. Whenever we play, I win.
Next. I don't have a response to that, you fucking asshole.
Well, they don't know. They believe me.
All Swade does is foul. There's like literally nothing else he knows how to do.
It's street ball. I was raised on the street, Walt. We don't play your rich man's basketball.
And then finally you get braver and braver. You're doing tricks. You're like, oh fuck, I can do more. So I get to one part of where I'm so convinced I can ski that I try to do a jump. And I don't make the jump successful, and I fall into the snow, and my skis break off my shoes. My brother and sister were below me, and they said from their angle, they thought I broke all my legs. So when I got up, they were like, oh my fucking god, we're so fucking relieved that you're okay. So ever since then, yes, I shouldn't be drinking during extreme sports, even if I'm not going to do something intense. Anyways, last time I went hiking, my brother brought a friend, and climbing is not like everyone does it. So my friend literally had a panic attack.
How steep, Walter? How steep is this? Like a 90-degree angle? Like a... What are we talking here?
Just so you know, Swade gave me 90 degrees, but his hand was like a 30-degree angle.
Well, okay, I don't know. I'm not some math wizard. I'm not some... Look, here's how I live my life. I foul in basketball. I punch dudes out, and I kiss them. I kiss them after I punch them. I don't know about angles. I don't know about numbers.
Oh, I mean, I don't really know how degrees work either, so I really...
You also don't know math! You cuckold! I mean, this is... Okay. If you were to stop climbing, would you fall?
No, you don't fall. For example, my cousin would be able to walk on it. He wouldn't need to climb.
Okay, yeah, I've taken some hikes like that. Yeah. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, so my friend was like, he had a panic attack in the middle of the mountain, and he kept saying like, hiking is not worth my life.
He sounds like a Swade. He sounds like he's got some premium Swade energy.
Finally he did it. So honestly I think it wasn't like an ability thing. It was just like the first time he's ever seen a mountain like this.
Yeah.
So he didn't fucking expect it. So he was like super like anxious about it. But we were talking to my cousin and we were like, oh man, you said this mountain would be easier than all the mountains we used to do. So that's why we told him it would be an easier mountain. It would be chill. And he was like, you mean a stroll? I don't do strolls, man.
Oh my god.
My cousin is so jock that like he always calls all these mountains in Hong Kong a 1 out of 5.
I've been on 2 hikes like that. One was when I was like probably 13, and I did in fact have a panic attack when I got to the top. Did not like it. Did not like being that high up in the air. No thank you. Fuck that. The second time I was in high school, and I mean it was just like, it was fine. It was a lot of work, and it sucked. We walked up a hill for no reason. I don't know. Like, we walked up a big-ass mountain. It's called Dragon's Tooth. We hiked up Dragon's Tooth. It was long. We had to climb a little bit. It sucked. I got up there. I was like, I don't get it. I don't get this. This sucks. I don't understand ever going on a walk that you can't chain smoke while you're doing. Like, the problem with climbing mountains for me is if I want to, like, take a cigarette break or I want to, like, smoke a cigarette while I'm, like, talking, it becomes impossible. The only sport... I don't know if this is a sport even. I was only ever good at was wrestling. I could always put people in like a headlock. And some of it was because a lot of the people I wrestled were Tori and Walt, who are both smaller than me. So that was a lot of our wrestling, was just like I was able to make Walter and Tori go on the ground and stick on the ground. I mean, let's just like put it out there that I was the one who I beat both you and Tori multiple times in wrestling matches. And this was without me punching. Tori would punch me, and I would just make him be on the ground. You remember? We used to do it in our underwear.
I do remember.
We would be like super pissed
the thing
drunk.
is, I know you disagree, but if a sport has no rules, that's not a fucking sport. So your wrestling has no rules, so it's not a sport. It's just 2 people in underwear. That would be like 2 people jerking off each other and then you calling it a sport.
No, are you kidding me? Here's how the sport goes. 2 people enter into a ring.
There's no ring!
The ring is everything. The ring is everything. And when one person taps out, you've won. That's the sport.
Alright. Even Fight Club has more rules.
Yeah, because Fight Club is for fucking nerds. This is Hobbesian wrestling. This is some state of nature ass wrestling.
Yeah, I think I've only wrestled with you once because I never wanted to.
Yeah, I know. Tori was more willing, and Tori was actually closer to an even closer because he worked out. I wrestled some other people, and I would, and we did it a bunch in high school. I mean, that was like one of the things we just get like stoned or drunk and just like knock into each other and stuff. That was the only thing I ever really did physically. I was pretty bad at... I have bad kinetic vision. I have a hard time catching balls and seeing things move.
I don't know. Maybe I'm too homophobic, dude. I just, like, don't enjoy all the contact, honestly.
Well, no, but I mean, I think that kind of makes sense, because you're not, like, super into, like, physical contact in general. And I grew up in a pretty physical household, partly because of how small our house was. It just happened that way. I don't know. It's also maybe a southern thing. I don't know. Because, like, I met this kid who, like, moved from Philadelphia, and he was talking. I don't know if this is true, but he moved from Philadelphia. I met him, like, maybe half a year ago. He comes in the store every once in a while. And he talks about, like, how in Philly they used to just fight all the time. And that was, like, a thing they did. I don't know if that's a northern thing. I don't know if that's, like, a really urban thing. But we didn't really do that when we like fucked with each other. Most of it was like pushing and like shoving and putting in a headlock and stuff. There was rarely did we like strike each other with a closed fist. And this kid's like, yeah, me and my guys would just like,
If we're talking about like physical contact though, and this is like how come I probably don't think why holding hands is more lewd than kissing. No, I'm joking. There's no trauma or anything. I just think it's really funny how much Asians hate physical contact, but this story exists. So when my brother was like in 3rd grade or 2nd grade, he got in like a lot of fucking trouble one time because for a month he was playing tag with like 12 girls. It was just him, and sometimes another guy would join.
Your brother is so much cooler than you. It's like so funny.
So what the game ended up devolving into, because I'm pretty sure it was never supposed to be.
Is this going to be like one of those things where I said he was cool, and then it's like a Me Too story, and then he's not cool?
Oh shit.
Oh, okay, let's hear the story. Let's see if this is a Me Too story.
So what ended up happening was that it became like 12 girls chasing my brother, and they would like cuff my brother or hold him, and in order for my brother to escape, he would kiss the girls, and each girl who would get kissed would immediately let go, and then he would break free. And then the girls who had been kissed would be like, "Oh no, I've been kissed at one part," and a bunch of girls would surround and be like, Where did you get kissed?" And I like watched it once, and like my brother would just throw his face into like random people, and then the girls would literally just stop as if they were like frozen tag, and all the girls are like, "Oh my god, you got kissed on your nose! Oh no!" But I just remember that story really well because he didn't even hold hands with any of these girls.
You would just kiss them as a self-defense mechanism. I would like to watch watch a movie, preferably a martial arts film. There, the main guy's technique is like he kisses people, and they're like, "Oh, I've been kissed by the power of the smooch," and then they get taken out. I'll be honest. I don't think that sounds like a Me Too story. That sounds like just kids having fun.
No, the story is honestly super, super nuanced and complicated if you really wanted to dive into it. Because at the same time, these girls were like, they can't like the kiss, but they're chasing after him in order to get kissed.
Yeah, exactly. So it's this weird, like, it's kids testing boundaries. It's kids trying to figure out stuff in what seems like a pretty harmless fashion. I mean, there's like so many other ways kids test boundaries that like can really have some negative effects.
Mm-hmm.
I remember there were girls in 4th grade who kept trying to kiss me, and I wanted them to stop. So I blacked out and then threw a swing at their face and busted their nose, this one girl's nose. And I got in a whole lot of trouble, and I had to talk to the counselor.
Yeah, it sounds...
Look, I've only ever blacked out and hurt someone, like, through 2 times in my life. Only twice. It was that time, and then at a bar mitzvah.
I watched this film called Perfumed Nightmare, which is like, I think it's pretty famous, new wave sort of Filipino film, and it's directed by a man named Kidlat Tahimik. What's immediately very interesting is that it's one of those meta films that plays with genres, films that plays with reality and filmmaking, and pushes the boundary of how fictional is fiction.
When did this movie come out, Walt? You didn't say that.
So the film came out in 1997. It is like a half-essay documentary. And what I mean by that is he films a lot of events in his neighborhood like a documentary, like an essay documentary, not a normal documentary.
I gotcha.
It's also kind of a travel log because he ends up going to France, I think, or Germany. And then it's also a story where he's the main character. So he introduces himself in the beginning of the film as Kidlat Tahimik. For me, I do have a soft spot for films like these, even if they don't work very well. I usually don't mind that because I just think it's really cool when someone tries to extend the boundaries of what's fiction and what's reality. But basically, as I said, this film has a bit of story in it, and it's about him, the director, Kidlat Tahimik, and he's super obsessed with Werner von Braun. Do you know who that is?
Was he involved in World War II in the creation of the atom bomb?
Maybe he was that. I know he was he was a German in World War II who helped a lot with the space program or something like that. Maybe he also helped with the atomic bomb. I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, he was. Werner von Braun was one of those. That's actually weird because Werner von Braun was one of those scientists that like profited and like worked pretty close with Nazi Germany, which is like kind of true of most scientists. I mean, like, right, like there are very few scientists that like didn't work with brutal regimes, right? Plenty of scientists work with the U.S. government, and we're working under a brutal regime right now. But you're already off to a weird start in a movie if someone you're really invested in is someone who not only helped create weapons for the United States, but also do Nazi science before the fall of Nazi Germany.
I didn't realize that now that you mention it, but honestly, to me, it makes sense. Basically, the film is like a post-colonial film. So he is so obsessed with the West and then gets an opportunity to go to the West, travel there, and then sort of gets slightly disillusioned. And there's not anything very obvious about any of this stuff because the plot is really not that important, but it does have some fun, like, visual satirical jokes. So I'm guessing this is one of the satirical jokes of him being obsessed with Werner von Braun. But that does remind me, while it's satirical in a way, it's also real. For example, my grandma thinks, is his name Eisenhower?
Dwight Eisenhower?
Dwight Eisenhower is like known as one of the big imperialists of the world, right?
I don't actually know enough about history to have a good answer for that.
God damn it, we need Catherine here.
God damn it, Catherine. None of us, both got bullshit degrees. We don't actually know anything.
Okay, you know what? Let's just call him Izzy the Conqueror.
Okay.
My grandma is really obsessed with whoever this person is, Izzy the Conqueror, and she thinks he's like some great hero. I know when I went to America, I remember hearing his name and being like, wait a fucking second, my grandma loves this person. And then realizing, oh wait, everyone thinks he's like one of the worst perpetuators of colonial violence or imperialistic violence. While there's something satirical about liking Werner von Braun for being a Nazi and for profiting over like American industrialism or whatever you want to call it, it makes sense because a lot of Asians get obsessed with these Western figures that are not very good, but because the West is so good at selling all their figures, we don't know any better. It's a great example of how this film is pretty clever in that type of way. Here's a really obvious visual joke that I actually picked up immediately. There's the representation of an American in this film is just this random white guy with what's his hat called?
He's got a straw hat on and sunglasses, and he's just in like beige clothes.
Basically, this American initially is like riding on Kidlat's jeepney, which is taxi in Philippines back in that time, and he decides to be like, I don't really want to sit with all the Filipinos in the taxi, so can I sit on your luggage cart? So he goes into the back and sits on the luggage cart, and all the Filipinos in the taxi are like laughing at him because he's like struggling to sit on the luggage cart. What they don't realize is he doesn't want to sit with them, and they're the ones dragging him because he's the American. So it's actually pretty funny and really clever, in my opinion, that like there's a lot of these jokes where the Filipinos are like not understanding how the Americans are like taking advantage of them, and they're proud and they think it's like okay what's happening, or that the American doesn't understand their culture. But there's a little more sharpness and edge to them not just understanding your culture. You are the citizens that are dragging him, and to the American, you are serving him. And I want to watch it again one day and like really like look at these metaphors, because as you said, I didn't notice this Werner von Braun thing, but now that you've mentioned it, it actually gets me super excited. I think another great thing about this film though is that Kidlat, he has a genuinely interesting smile. So Kidlat is like, he has this, what would you call this haircut? A bowl cut?
It's a like really terrible bowl cut.
Yeah, it's a really terrible bowl cut.
It's like, he's got like a wispy goat style mustache beard combo. It's not like thick enough to be bushy. It's almost like, it's like almost there. It's like a whisper of a mustache and beard. It's also gray-ish in comparison to his jet black hair.
He smiles a lot in this film, and his smile is like fake? I don't know. He probably doesn't think his smile is fake, but his smile just looks a little fake. It looks a little empty. But in the plot, he is very genuine about his smile. So I really like that. The documentary stuff in this film is also pretty interesting. I thought some of the stuff that was just normal life was cool. So, for example, you got to see their car factory, which apparently Philippines back then, I don't know, the movie says this, is like one of the biggest exporters of cars. You see them like moving a huge chunk of ice around. Some of the unique parts of Philippines are also shown. I don't know how much it's still done, but there is sometimes a celebration in a lot of parts of Philippines, I think, or maybe some parts of Philippines. I don't want to make statements I don't really know, where they flog themselves in respect for Jesus Christ, and some people even, I think, get crucified.
Actually, this is not necessarily unique to the Philippines. I don't think. I think there are some other places that do this, but I know it's pretty prevalent in the Philippines. Like, I know that is one of the big places.
Okay,
especially because most of the Philippines is Catholic.
I don't know. I actually don't know.
Actually, so one of the things that I think is interesting is when you see the Filipino community has not like in like broad strokes, but in the places I've seen in South Louisiana, the Filipino community acclimates really well with the Cajun community because there's similar understandings of the way Catholicism is practiced, and a lot of the food is similar because of where Cajun like food is gathered and where like food comes in the Philippines. Like, you know, it's rice, it's like seafood and stuff like that.
Do you have stuff to explain? You've seen them have good relationships with the Cajun community, because I don't really know if I have ever seen that.
It's just something I've seen in Louisiana, right? That there's not like necessarily a schism in the way there is with other communities in South Louisiana.
This film also has live circumcision.
Okay, death metal.
Apparently in this village, they don't circumcise their kids at like super young. They circumcise them at like 7 or 8, and they like take 2 wooden blocks, surround the penis, and then take a knife and then slit it off or something.
Okay, okay. That's not at all right. I think what you're talking about is they take the foreskin, they pull the foreskin, they grab the extra foreskin between the 2 blocks, and they cut off that extra bit. Is that accurate? Because there is no way in hell there are just people cutting off the tips of actual people's penises in the Philippines. That's just not, that can't be right.
I have no idea, because I don't know how foreskin works.
What do you mean? Don't you have foreskin?
No, because I was circumcised like as a baby.
Well, haven't you seen pornography where they're for people who have been circumcised?
Yeah, I've seen pornography, but because I seen it. Oh no, I've never seen pornography as real life circumcision.
No, not okay. God damn it. Okay, let me explain to you how this.
I didn't realize that was pornography.
No, that's okay. I guarantee what they're doing is they're taking the foreskin because it's stretchy. Putting the little tip of the foreskin between the 2 blocks of wood, pulling it so it's stretched out, and then cutting that bit.
I don't know why you thought I would know, though.
Dude, because you have a penis!
Yeah, but I've never touched foreskin. You know what I will say, though? You've seen my penis.
I have seen
I've never seen yours.
Well, yeah, because I'm fucking shy about my wiener.
Yeah, so that's what I mean. Like, I don't know. A lot of people don't show their penis to me. And I don't have that many opportunities to touch other people's penises. Maybe one day, but right now, I just don't know how foreskin works. I can see it in porn, but I don't really understand it. Sometimes I think foreskin is funner. I know a lot of people think foreskin is gross, but isn't it, like, funner to, like, stick your tongue underneath the foreskin, maybe? Or, like, play around with it with your hands?
So here's the things I know about foreskin. One, there's more nerve endings. Or no, it covers some of the nerve endings at your penis, so the tip of your penis is sometimes is usually more sensitive if you have a foreskin. Number 2, if you don't clean out the junk from under it, then like there can get like detritus that gets trapped up in there, which is a lot of the argument for why we should circumcise our children. Why people circumcise, I don't actually really have an opinion one way or the other.
Cleaning is very easy, right?
Yeah, I would assume as much.
I just think playing with foreskin seems so much more fun in a sexual experience than like playing with a non-foreskin penis.
How do you? Okay, but you have literally no background on this. You literally couldn't understand how someone gets circumcised. Now you're like, it's probably just for fun. You're just like making shit up now. You're just fucking, we're in Walter's imagination foreskin land.
But yeah, it was funny to watch this scene because of how happy all these kids were, because this was a coming of age ritual for a lot of them. So a lot of them, some of them would be crying, but everyone else would be like smiling and happy, and they were just happy of getting a piece of their skin getting cut off.
There's a lot of activities that get put not under the idea of physical mutilation that people are like totally jazzed about. That's like totally cultural context, right? Like I feel like tattoos are very similar. Because like if you pull out the like cultural leftovers that are in a tattoo, all you're doing is taking a needle, shoving ink under someone's skin, and doing it over and over again until there's a picture on it. I mean, right? Like if I did that to a stranger, if I just like walked up and took a ballpoint pen, just like jabbed someone in the neck and they had like a spot, I was like, there you go. Like people would think I'm a monster, right? It's so much of what we do to our bodies is about the context of when and how we do them. People pierce their children's ears also.
My sister had to pierce her ears when she was very young too, and my mom's argument for it, because she of course didn't want to do it, is you don't want to do it when you're older. You don't want to do it when you're older.
Yeah, like why? What does that mean? Yeah.
Yeah, and that's how I bet like parents would tell their kids when they were doing the circumcision back then. If someone was uncomfortable with it, you don't want to do it when you're older.
Well, I think really the takeaway is that that there are lots of different things that we would. I think when you say something like physical mutilation, it's totally a judgy term, but there's so much of so much of what we view as mutilation is the context of the culture we're sitting in, right? Like no one calls it mutilation when you get your ears pierced. No one calls it mutilation when you get your wisdom teeth removed. And you know what? Like we might be talking out of our asses, Walt, because like you could use this argument to go to some pretty dark places with like the way people's
my brain right now is thinking about how I have to avoid talking about female genital mutilation because I have no conversation about that. So I'll try to dance around the word mutilation. Unless you have something you want to talk about for female genital mutilation.
Well, then it's bad. I mean, like, it's bad. It's not good. People shouldn't be doing it. It's like an arm of the patriarchy, I guess is how people describe it. And that, like, we're supposed to be good cultural relativists and, like, not tell other cultures what to do. Especially, like, from a white Westerner to, like, a non-white non-Westerner. But on the other hand, there are like plenty of women in zones where genital mutilation happens who are like, no, this is a fucking problem. In the same way that like, I don't think you're doing a bad job at practicing cultural relativism if you're like, no, the Taliban probably should let girls go to school. Like
yes.
There's a difference between being like, people should be allowed to wear burqas and like cover themselves and not be shamed for that. But there are fucking plenty of people who are down with wearing their burqas and they should fucking be allowed to do that and it shouldn't be a problem. But that's how you practice cultural relativism in a way that's like chill, is like not telling other people what to do. But there's, on the other end of the spectrum, there's nothing wrong with seeing something fucked up that's happening that other people are vocally saying, this is fucked up and I want it to stop, and agreeing with them.
The funny thing about cultural relativism is that it sucks because at the same time, you are silencing a lot of voices if you just make statements. But if you make the statement for the opposite side without allowing for silenced voices to actually talk anyways, you're still doing cultural relativism no matter what. So you kind of just have to trust and have faith that even in our fucked up academic silencing text sphere, you just have to trust it a little bit because there's not really much else you can do, in my opinion. Because if you don't trust it and you're like, all right, I'm just going to speak out of it, you're still fucking speaking for them anyways.
Yeah, no, it's exactly what you're saying. If basically by saying that by practicing cultural relativism, if you say by practicing cultural relativism, what I'm doing is saying it's okay to do female genital mutilation, what you're actually saying is I'm only practicing cultural relativism for a set group of people, not the entire culture.
That's alright. I think we salvaged this.
Yeah, I think we did.
So we don't look like despicable people.
None of my questions, which makes perfect sense because you did absolutely no research. You did no research. You couldn't even figure out who the fuck Dwight Eisenhower was, so good job. I did a little bit of research because I am an academic and a patrician. I didn't do a whole lot of research, but so the film I watched was Eerie, which came out in 2008, and it's not all that good. But it was scary.
Hey, here we don't judge films.
Okay, there's no bad films. There's no bad films. This was a great film. I loved it. 10 out of 10.
So we have established 2 new laws.
You can't be horny to your co-casters, and there's no such thing as a bad movie. I am a total horror junkie. I tend to be a total scaredy cat bitcho about horror movies, but I read a lot of horror, and I watch a fair bit of it too. The things that I liked about Eerie were not the new things it was doing in horror, because as far as plot goes, it's pretty old hat. I mean, basically, girls keep dying in a Catholic girls' school. There's a woman who can see ghosts. As it turns out, one of the girls was bullied to death. Becomes an evil, vengeful spirit and starts killing people. It's like very like it's no new territory, nothing crazy, just like pretty classic horror story. But there were some things that I did find really engaging. One of them is so this actually there are some sections that reminded me a little bit of The Third Exorcist, which I've talked about before, where there are just these still shots of crucifixes, right? Like while there's stuff going on, they'll cut to the image of this crucifix, right? They'll cut to like recordings of the crucifix while all the children are playing. And this movie is like very dreary. It is like, I mean, there is it's a color film, but it's all toned down. Everything's like brown and gray and black and white, especially the nuns' outfits and the little girls' outfits.
I'm just going to quickly interject a little. Honestly, that's fun because it is like religion has like these two extremes. It's either incredibly dreary where you try to drear out all the black and white contrast in a church or anything, or you have them super bright and super contrasted.
Yeah, and this definitely plays a little bit with the idea of like what is good and what is bad. I don't think it does it in a very nuanced or interesting way, but it does play with it. But I want to get back to these crucifixes, right? There's just like I think something so engaging in horror from a Catholic perspective. With the idea of, or a secular perspective really, of the crucifix, because it's really what it is it's the image of someone suffering. They're always ghastly. It's always this emaciated Christ figure with like nails in his arms, like hanging, and often the really garish ones will have blood and stuff. Did you grow up with crucifixes in your household, Walter? I know some Chinese families did.
No, not mine. We were kind of Protestants, so we weren't so icon based.
Okay. What is the horror that comes from the act of crucifixion, right? Is it something like really ugly, like it's just, you know, that a man dies and he was a good man and he was punished anyways? Or is it this like empathy that you get from like looking at a person who's in pain? Because like Christ was in pain as he was being crucified, right? That elicits a lot of empathy.
Or is it the guilt that we let this happen?
That's, I mean, I don't know if that's quite the case. We didn't let this happen. What, are you saying that because I'm Jewish, Walt?
No, I'm saying that because we have a lot of historical baggage in our society that still affect us today. That, yeah, we didn't let happen, but we still have to deal with the haunting of it and the trauma.
I don't think I don't think I go there with you. I think to me what I think is really what it is, you're praying to an all-loving, all-forgiving God at this altar of pain. It's like it just like doesn't I think for people, once you can get there, once you can see the juxtaposition between like a figure who will bring you peace and love and safety juxtaposed against what is an incredibly horrific, brutal death, that push and pull is like such an easy setup for the hypocrisy in Christianity, and specifically in Catholic Christianity and Catholicism, that is so ripe for horror picking. And I think baggage is like always going to connect in Catholicism, because so much of it is about seeking punishment for your sins, right? The act of confessional. You speak of your baggage and then you are punished for it, usually in the form of saying Hail Marys or counting beads on the rosary.
Crosses and crucifixes are different, right? Crucifix has to have the Jesus death,
yeah,
or
crucifix has to have Christ on it.
Because that juxtaposition is also interesting, because the cross is such a symbol of hope.
Yes, exactly. Especially in horror films, right? Because the cross is what banishes the dead. You know, I mean, it's the easiest one is it burns vampires,
and it burns my tingly feelers.
Your tingly feelers. Is it burn the tip of your penis without a foreskin?
Yeah, but I meant like the whole body.
Okay, the whole body.
Yeah, I'm not so centered on one part of my body when I burn my tingly feels.
Okay, that's disgusting. Every part of you is disgusting. You are sensorially unpleasant to me, and I hate it. So basically, the main girl gets bullied to death, and then she's like, this is one of the things I think was interesting to me. The main girl gets bullied to death, so she just becomes an evil ghost. Like, she doesn't get redeemed at the end of the story. She's just like, yeah, everyone bullied me to death and it sucked, so now I murder people. And the whole time I'm watching this movie, and in a normal arc, especially in like a Western horror film, you know, the little girl who's tortured into being a monster at the end would get some redemption. And we've talked about this, that ghosts in Asia, specifically in China, are very different from Western ghosts, right? And that a lot of ghosts are bad.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that I think was really interesting is, in a Western context, if this little girl got bullied to death, and I mean these her parents bully her and like shave her hair, and make her look super ugly, and like all the kids make fun of her, and I think there's like some subtext that she might be queer, she might be a lesbian, and the kids make fun of her for that. And the nuns give her corporal punishment. They slap her hands with big sticks with paddles, and this girl just finally hangs herself. And you know, the heroine in the end, instead of who's this like teacher, kind of like counselor at the school who can see ghosts, at the end of the film, instead of being like, little girl, it's okay, I'll make you, you know, just, I'll accept you for who you are. And then the little girl's like, oh, I'm not evil anymore. And she gets to go to heaven. This ghost is like, nah, I'm fucking evil, bro. I'm like an evil hell ghost. So that brings me to the other section I want to talk about, which is that this movie scared the shit out of me. I had a period in my life that was unpleasant. And because of it, I have issues with some of the images in East Asian horror. They harken back to some unpleasant things that happened in my life. So I don't like to watch them because the image of like a small, spooky... Okay, here's what it is. There was like a point in my life where I was like having hallucinations and I dealt with it. I don't have them anymore. But some of the images were these like scary little ghost girls.
Was there a particular movie?
Things like The Grudge, things like The Ring... I really take issues with, and some of it has to do with my vision too. I have really poor vision, so the idea, if I take off my glasses, we've talked about this, I take off my glasses and there's something that I cannot see coming towards me. It's absolutely horrifying to me. And so much of these movies are based on like things creeping out of the corners that you can't see. So I tend to ignore them. I fully assume to have a panic attack tonight, somewhere about 12:45, 2 a.m., somewhere between there. But so I don't tend to watch a lot of these Asian horror movies that have to do with ghosts.
There's actually some ghost horror films that are not very horror that exist, especially if the older ones. So I'm thinking of Kawaii-Dan, and then there's like Onibaba, and they're not as scary per se. I do think still when you watch those films, the ghosts don't get the same type of...
They don't get humanized. They're monsters to the end.
Well, they get humanized in a different way, because even as a monster, you can still be humanized. You know what I mean? So I wouldn't use the word humanized. I would use the word like they don't get the resolution for someone who's been so who's had such an unfair life.
This young girl just like totally gets shit on her whole life. And as a ghost, she's terrifying. She has like this ashy gray skin with like patches that are coming off, and her teeth are all fucked up. And she still has the haircut from when her mom was like gave her this really awful spooky haircut. I mean, and it's
that's pretty cool.
You want to know something else? And I think this is why I was interested in sort of talking about the difference in the way the ghost is treated in Western horror. It seems like there's no way for her to get redemption, right? There's no redemption for her at the end. Exactly.
That's the word I wanted, redemption, not resolution.
And so you see this sometimes in things like the X-Files or, oh my god, the show's so terrible. I only watched a little bit of it, and I'm sorry for anyone who likes this show, but Supernatural.
Dino Trucks?
Yeah, Dino Trucks. In Dino Trucks, when one of the baby Dino Trucks dies and comes back as an evil Dino Truck ghost, and kills the mother. No, in the X-Files and in Supernatural, sometimes you'll have these ghosts that are irredeemable. But at most, you're spending 45 minutes with these ghosts. This was like a movie that was like an hour and 45 minutes. One of the ways actually this is done, and I think this is really interesting, I was having trouble figuring out who some of the characters were, and at first I was like, oh man, I'm just being racist and thinking all Asian people look alike. So I rewound it, and what I realized is it's actually really hard to tell which little girl is on screen, and it's because almost all the girls have the same hair length, and they're almost always shot from behind. And they're done like this in groups. And so it's really interesting, actually. The beginning intro of the main character is dreaming. And all these little girls in the same outfit with the same length hair are jumping rope. But they're jumping rope from behind. So you can only see them from behind. And their hair is flopping up and down. And then this nun walks out and they're jumping rope and they're jumping rope. And then they jump and then they fall. And you still never see their faces. And there's so many shots of just like streams of little girls without their faces, right? Just streams of the back of their head. And it kind of is interesting because It makes for some intrigue because you're like wondering like what the ghost is, what the evil is here.
You said that this film was not your favorite film, but it still scared you?
Because a lot of the images were really scary, and a lot of the pacing is really scary. There's not like a central philosophy that I think makes really good horror. There's another section where like she's getting bullied, and it cuts between her getting bullied and her just eating a live butterfly for some reason, and it's very cool. But it's also kind of creepy. And it's like, okay, so was she bad from the beginning, and the bullying was like commonplace? Like what am I supposed to grok from her eating a butterfly? And which is not to say that I think every movie needs to have this like cohesive spiritual philosophical theme, but the movie also doesn't do anything new enough to have it be all crazy, right? I mean, the images, like the little ghost girl, you could take her straight out of The Grudge. I mean, it's just like one of those.
And the jump rope feels like Nightmare on Elm Street a little.
Like the third Exorcist film has this really weird conversation on like race and sex and what happens when you die. There's like stuff there, but it felt to me like Eerie was a little all over the place. And I will say one caveat, which is that I don't trust Netflix translators. I think sometimes, especially with horror, some of the nuances get lost in translation, and things like Netflix will like translate for a really wide audience just to make everything make sense.
I actually find what you said kind of interesting because you want some compliments that will make your nipples tingle.
Yeah, give me some compliments, baby. Compliment me.
Okay, before we really became friends, I never loved horror too much. And I think one of the reasons is because in a casual horror discussion, you really are just talking about what scares you visually. When I used to watch horror and I had discussions about it, the point was, oh, there was a lot of blood there, or, oh, that was scary. That jump scare was actually fucking insane.
And there are plenty of those in this movie. Plenty of jump scares, which I hate.
So, but it was until I talked to you that you helped me understand a lot of horror films are more than just that you can like sit back and think about what the philosophical scare is too. That's also interesting. That might not scare you really.
When I think it's what stays with you, which is why there are a few movies that I've seen that I will not watch again because of how upsetting the stuff in the background is.
I see. After we like split apart and moved to different cities, I started watching a little more like B-tier films, just random bloodshed films that like don't really have much nuance in them. And after understanding there's philosophical like importance in some horror films, I've somehow managed to re-love or like re-find a joy in just visual scares. That's why I'm giving you this compliment, because I really do think it had to start with the understanding that there's something deeper in the understanding of horror, and horror doesn't just have to be scary. Then to finally realize, actually, these visual scares that don't really mean too much either are still super, super fun, and there's something really enjoyable about
One
them.
of the things, this movie is like very pretty. It's very good at like doing things weird with the camera. There's this scene where this little girl is like you think she's just another student who's like coming to talk about her problems, and as it turns out, she is the fucking evil ghost. Her name's Erica, and they keep cutting back and forth between her and the school counselor, and they're both set in the exact center of the frame with the exact same depth of field, and it just keeps cutting back and forth. Super weird, super unnerving, but also just like you can tell people were playing with the camera a lot when they were doing this.
Of course, if this film is like too technical and playing around too much, it might take away from the visuals in a way.
I have a question for you, Walter. If I asked you what a comfort room is, would you know what that is?
No.
Okay, so this is something
It sounds like a sex thing.
It's not. This is what I learned from some of my research. Oh, and I will say, so some of the other research is that the push and pull between and I'm going to say Filipino, but I know there's like more subgroups there. I just don't know them. The push and pull between like traditional Filipino mythology and like stored folklore and Catholicism has like a really engaging push and pull that manifests in Filipino horror. So I may watch more of these because I like that, there's not really a analog for that in the US, right? I mean, I guess the closest thing I can think of is like, really, because like the last group we have in the US who's like not default Christianity or default Judeo-Christian are like the native folks, and so the push and pull between like native horror and Judeo-Christian horror. And really the only person I know who actually does that is Stephen Graham Jones is a horror author who's he won the Bram Stoker Award 2021 for his novel Only Good Indians. He wrote another film about slasher, or another movie about a book about slashers. And so he plays with that a little bit, but I don't know if there's any horror movies written by native folks that function similarly. Anyhow, the comfort room. Apparently, that's what they call the bathroom in the Philippines.
Oh, it is comfortable. It is a sex thing then.
I hope not. I mean, like, it's okay to have sex in the bathroom, but literally, I was so weirded out because in the beginning you have this little girl and she's one of the girls who dies and she's walking into the bathroom. It's fucking horrifying. Bathrooms are terrifying. There's this, I read a lot of manga because I'm a fucking weeaboo, I guess. And there's this monster that shows up. The rest of the weebs probably know which monster this is, called Hanako. She's like a Japanese, like, folklore ghost monster. Hanako the toilet. She's like this scary little ghost girl who for some reason died in the toilet, and she like drags people down to hell through the toilet. She's like a Bigfooty figure. Bigfoot-esque figure, or like Wampus Cat. That's one of the ones from around my neck of the woods. The Wampus Cat is a Native American woman who did some bad shit, and as punishment, her like Native American gods punished her to be like a werecat, and she like goes around and kills people in the Appalachia.
She kills white people when they hike, or what?
No, she just kills anyone. She like tricks people into coming back to her campfire, and then she transforms into a cat lady and kills you. No, but so this fucking girl is like coming to the bathroom, and then of course Erica, the evil ghost girl, fucking pranks her hard. But as she's going in, later the main character, the woman, is walking. And she comes to this door, and it just says the comfort room. And I was like, oh, fuck, that sounds fucked up. What is going to happen here in the comfort room? And then she opens the door, and it's just a bathroom. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on? And I was like, I paused my movie, actually. And I went downstairs, and I was like, because my dad went to Catholic school. He's not Filipino, but he went to Catholic school. And I was like, do you know what the fuck a comfort room is? And he's like, no. And I'm like, okay, all right, later. And I came back, and I watched the movie, and I Googled it. And yeah, apparently they call, in the Philippines, that's what they call the bathroom. Which, I mean, you know, it's nice. It sounds better. It's like, what do they call the water closet? Isn't that what they call bathroom in England? The water closet?
Fish and chips?
Oi, bruv, she a right fit bird, innit? It's 12 bong!
Penguins?
Penguins? Oi! What are you talking about penguins? Are you just thinking of Batman villains now that are British?
No, I just thought, I was just trying.
You're trying your best. Okay, well, I want to give you a compliment that will make your nipples tingle and say that I think you tried your best.
Okay, thank you.
No, the comfort room kind of threw me off. It was weird.
I don't know if this is, like, super, super relevant, but, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't know enough about, like, American horror, per se. If you look at a lot of the West Christianity stuff, it's, like, the innocent girl gets possessed, something like that, right? And when they're vengeful, it usually is in, like, witchcraft, or, like, maybe you accept a demon into your life, but it's never your fault, unless you're a witch, which is why we burn all the witches.
Well, but even these days, a lot of these witch movies, you know, like, a lot of these witches are being terrible in response to being burned.
Yes, and a lot of these witches right now, because witches are so female-based, you realize their history is actually a huge civilization of immense sexism and patriarchy. So that's why they had to resort to that, or that's why they ended up resorting to that. I kind of feel a lot of Asian horror is a little more biased towards revenge. And it's like more of the pure revenge where the context you recognize and you know it exists, but it almost doesn't even matter.
I mean, I will tell you, I think it's way easier to find a Japanese rape revenge film than it is to find a Western one. I mean, there are tons of it in the West, but I think, and this might be me talking out of my ass, I'm not quite sure, but I think when we've had conversations about the differences between Western and Eastern culture, and that it comes down to individual or collectivism, right? And I think a lot of the horror in the West, there's a lot of stuff that can be picked at and pushed at, but one of the things that I think really, especially with things like possession or demons, is a loss of agency, right? Like, one of the central terrors in a lot of Western horror film is a loss of control, a loss of agency. And from what I've read of, like, manga and stuff like that, a lot of the revenge in these horror films is a willingness to go against a collective community. In the West, the thing that you're most scared of is losing the one thing you have, which is your individual willpower and your agency. And in the East, the scariest thing is someone who's from your community who has turned your back on the community and is now trying to harm that community, right?
A collectivism that has an individual who regained their agency almost.
Yes, exactly. Well, that's what this little girl's thing is. That's what this little girl's thing in this movie. She's like, I didn't have any control. Everyone was shitty to me. So now I want to... And it's almost... This was like kind of fun and I kind of liked it. It's just not central enough through the whole film. If it had been there more, I would have been more into it. She's like, well, everyone suffers under God, but I was the only one suffering, so I wanted to bring everyone back under God by making them suffer, by killing them. And I was like, you should have put that in the beginning. That's like, because I'm super down with the idea of like bringing someone back to God's life through violence is like again, like by killing people is like such a twist on traditional Catholic values, right? Because ostensibly, if you take Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, as soon as you die, it's like dope. You get to go to heaven, and it's like chill as shit. Through like a warped logic sense, you are doing the right thing. But I don't think that's what this little girl was doing. I think that's just like a line they threw in. I think really it's this idea of turning your back on a collective culture versus and striking out against it versus a lack of agency. Those are like the two central themes I see as differences in East and West. And there's like tons of other stuff too, right?
So like I mentioned, I think that's all the time we have because I have to go hiking.
Catherine should be on the next one. Hopefully all the bubble gum will be removed from her inside. Worst comes to worst, we'll just put like a tube in her mouth and blow it full of air, and all the bubble gum will just like shoot out of her asshole in one giant bubble. I mean, I don't know any other way around it. Hopefully she gets free of this bubble gum prison. Alrighty then. Well, just remember, if you're gonna watch a movie, do it with the lights on.